deliberate. Let me apologize for that. I did not see your hand, but can we move on? Because, and you can do your...
I have to leave.
So in that case...
I think it won't take very long with it.
Yeah.
What you
I
want
mean,
to
I
do
will
right
take 2 seconds, but I actually say that I have read this misrepresentation. Can you hear me?
Right.
Hi. Hello, thank you. Sorry for the disruption, but I really have to go. Say this. That there are deep misrepresentations in what you say. And I'm not sure who you're quoting when you say that somebody who's defending me says that I say that the Zina law should be given a fair trial. That's deeply misrepresentative. The other thing is I don't proclaim to be a Muslim feminist. The work that I've done, which I think you're quoting, sorry.
People are asking who you are. You may want to introduce yourself.
Why? Sorry, I'm Sadafati. So the two works where I've discussed Islam at all. One looks at the question of consent in marriage and asks the question that where you don't have efficacy of law, formalized laws, what are the competing genealogies of different forms of law, and what may be used by women in certain types of situations, given that scripture has the capacity to be used as law to establish normativity in certain localities. Sorry, I find this. The second piece of work is actually looking at the difficulty of adjusting and reframing, repealing, or reforming Islamic laws once they've been established, right? And I speak about the different jurisprudential interpretive traditions, particularly situating the work of Javed Ahmed Gandhi, as he was or was not instrumental to the Pakistani state at a particular moment that it was seeking to undertake law reform. Nowhere is there justification for underage marriage. Nowhere is there justification for the Zina laws in their particular form. So if you need to make a kind of position about the virtues of secular feminism by suggesting that only secular feminists can speak for women because everybody who speaks in a different voice or even illustrates that other voice have spoken, then I think that's quite disingenuous. And the way in which that position gets conflated with an imperialist feminist or imperialist position is the fact that you will not subject that woman category to any kind of qualification on the basis of race, gender, ethnicity, social location, or anything of that sort. Because different discourses circulate in different pockets of society. So that's all. Thank you for that.
Can we move on now? I don't think Safia wants to have anything. So I'm sorry I was introducing you, Fatima, when I got interrupted by an emergency. So I was talking and saying Fatima has been a freelance researcher and likes to conduct qualitative research on issues of social and political relevance. Fatima is a Sufi aspirant and follower of the Shaziliya Sufi order. Her interests include writing poetry, painting, and trekking in the hills. I'll also introduce Saad. Saad Ali Khan is currently teaching at the Center of Excellence in Gender Studies with an academic background in international relations. His teaching and research areas constitute gender/feminist international relations, critical security studies, and peace and conflict studies. He's also a PhD candidate at the National Institute of Pakistan Studies and currently pursuing his research on the dynamics of gender and contemporary Sufism in Pakistan. Before joining academia, he worked with various NGOs and think tanks in Pakistan. So, Fatima and Saad. We would like to...
Oh, okay. Assalamu alaikum.
आज बहुत सारी बात हुई about knowledge production की और sites, knowledge कहाँ produce होती है. So we're going to move a little bit away from the sites we have so far mentioned and perhaps move to another site which we all have and we carry it within us. So the site that produces this kind of particular knowledge is the self. And it's in the internal realm, और वो हम सब के अंदर ये चीज़ मौजूद है. So we're going to move to that sort of side of knowledge production, which is also almost always not talked about because बहुत ही अजीब सी बात है. I talk about spirituality, Sufism, and so on. So ये बहुत अजीब सी बात है और उसके बारे में जो है हम ज़्यादा इसको और especially academia में तो इसकी कोई जगह बनती ही नहीं है. So this was intentional. जब मैं साथ जो paper लिख रहे थे, we had very interesting conversations about how we should actually do this paper. So we're actually sitting how we used to be sitting while we decided to write this paper, and the ideas that we came up with usually happen like this. So we wanted to actually also present what we have to present in the same format, and I'll explain it a little bit later why we're actually sitting like this, because it also sort of has to do with the title that we have chosen, or part of the title. So that's why we're sitting like this, and we also wanted to be closer to people, to audience. ये हमारा कोई बड़ा फन नहीं है. The furniture is also not very good looking, and I'm short, so I kind of hide behind these things, and I don't like to stand a lot because I do have an issue with my left knee, so I can't stand for a very long time. Anyway, so I'm going to begin by. Can you hear me? मैं बहुत ऊंचा तो नहीं बोल रही. Okay, I'm going to begin by a poem. And one more thing before we sort of really formally begin. अगर हमें लगे साद और मुझे कि we need to have a conversation, because that's what eventually happens when we are sort of together. So we'll sort of just go into that mode. Point है कि जो हम बात करना चाहते हैं वो किसी न किसी तरीके से आपको पहुंच जाए. Okay, and we'll try to make it short ताकि वैसे भी लोग थक गए होंगे और हम चाहते हैं कि ज़्यादा डिस्कशन हो. और जिस टॉपिक पे हम भी बात करें तो उसके बाद मैं चाहूँगी कि अगर मज़ीद जो है इस्लामिक फेमिनिज्म और सेकुलरिज्म और ये डाइकोटमी से निकल के अगर कोई बात हो सके तो आई वुड बी रियली इंटरेस्टेड इन दैट. सो आई बिगिन विद अ पोएम. इट्स कॉल्ड लर्निंग टू बी फ्रेग्रेंट. You won't believe I'm saying this, but yes, it's true. I implore you today, do not be frivolous and talk without meaning, like we have become accustomed to do. Let us walk instead to the landscape that begins, where words end. Leave conversations at the gate. Enter the sacred silence, where we learn from each other how to be fragrant again. So this poem is by my Sheikha Shahbano Aliani, whose sort of thoughts I will be presenting in the second part of our sort of conversation, talk, whatever you want to call it. And I am basically a vehicle for that kind of information that is coming from her. And जहाँ मुझे लगे कि because I'm a student और मुझे लगे कि emphasize करना है, share करना है, तो वो भी मैं करूँगी. So I want this to be a bit more autobiographical, and I will now begin to set the stage for our talk, really. So if you notice that we have a title which is Women's Engagement with Islamic Mysticism, a diptych account. So what is diptych? A diptych is a drawing or painting in two parts. The format of the pictures may be landscape or portrait, but they will usually be the same size. It is sometimes a continuous but divided image, or may be composed of separate, closely related images that are hinged together. This is important. आपने देखा होगा जैसे शादी की पुरानी जो एल्बम फ्रेम्स होते थे, वो उसके दो वो होते थे, sort of दो पहलू कह लें या दो पट होते थे, और वो जो इस तरह की एक तस्वीर का फ्रेम होता था उसमें एक common hinge होता था. So we're referring to that sort of technique, and that's why we're sitting like that. We will be slightly taking different sort of stance to this whole idea, but we have a hinge. It's the same thing but just different viewpoints, right? Okay. So it's I was explaining what that is. So the word diptych comes from the Greek Rutes, meaning two, and type, meaning fold, and was the name of the folding writing tablets used in Roman times. Two boards, most commonly wood, but also bone or metal, were hinged together, the inner faces covered with a layer of wax which could be inscribed. We have chosen to use this technique for our paper based on the premise that perhaps ideas and concepts are not really divided, fragmented, or separated in a way in which they stand in opposition to one another, but that two different views, standpoints can share a common hinge and can be seen in an interwoven continuum rather than in alienation from the other. Using this approach and to show how things are indeed connected, we use some common and foundational concepts in gender studies in this paper to illustrate our point. However, we are quite sort of aware of the limitation of time and space, so we're just going to pick a few and talk about those. And our idea of the whole paper is to basically just give pointers or to raise some questions, so it's very contemplative and sort of just, bringing up ideas. It's not to challenge, and we are not here with an agenda or anything. It's just merely to sort of insert basically the self into academia, So bring another side of production into another already existing side of production, but perhaps in a more subjective manner. Many ideas related to feminism and other theories as well are based on binaries, such as public, private, superior, inferior, rational, emotional, objective, subjective, etc. And we consider these dichotomies to be problematic. Saad and I consider this to be problematic in that they create hostility and alienation from the other. Although we understand the importance and need for doing this. If you don't have an enemy, you don't know who you're fighting. But we're saying maybe the enemy is within, or maybe there is no enemy, or whatever. However, these can be imagined and understood, so we're referring to the binaries, these can be imagined and understood in new and different ways. So this paper talks about binaries and how binaries are viewed in Sufism, which is the mystical part of Islam. In relation to women, gender, we talk about women's engagement with Sufism and whether it has empowered them. Ye word subah se hi sun rahe, empowerment. So we will perhaps just share what else empowerment can be about. In order to be more specific, we will actually be talking about maybe one case study. We had originally two, but looking at the time, we will perhaps just talk about one. So that will be my Sheikha, or my spiritual guru, teacher, Shabanu Alyani, will talk about her. So generally speaking, what is considered academic is mostly based on an objective point of view and does not, I'm saying mostly, not exclusively, it does not include intuitive ways of understanding things or what is considered flesh and theory, which is an experiential way of understanding one's reality. In other words, much of what is considered academic in social sciences comes quite close to neo-positivistic ways of seeing things, where the subjective is generally considered inferior. So our diptych account will include, and why we're saying diptych is because one, Saad is not purely, doesn't like to associate what we call purely academic, but he's going to take that stance. So he's going to sort of talk about binaries and mystical Islam, how it's sort of presented through academia or in academia, and I'm going to actually make it more autobiographical in terms of my shaykh and also myself. So that is why we're calling it, two sort of views and diptych. So we're going to include both academic and contemplative ways to show not only how women have benefited from their engagement with mystical Islam, but to also demonstrate how things are connected, and that binaries are not necessarily oppositional, but also can be complementary.
Thank you, Fatma. Before I would like to start the academic part of the presentation of the paper, I would like to share that when we were talking about and we were deciding about this paper, this was the most interesting debate that we had, and remembering the whole experience of that would remind me of what we are doing here today. And this discussion would be mostly of, it's not going to be one-sided or one aspect, it would be mostly a conversation between me and Fatma, जैसे हम लोग department में करते थे, and this would be like that. So So I would be very explicitly defining two aspects when we talk about the academic side of this paper, maybe. And these two aspects are, number one, number A is that how maybe the boundaries, because we are primarily engaging with the concept and boundaries and pairing, and how these boundaries are being imagined, constructed generally, number one. And number second is that because of the fact that we are dealing with Islamic mysticism, that is primarily known as Sufism, so how these boundaries are actually viewed within Sufism and how these boundaries are being imagined in Sufism. And by this, I'm also will be looking at the fact that these boundaries, we are interested in looking at how alternative ways are there to imagine these boundaries. Because when we were debating about this fact about boundaries, what happened is this, that when we talked about boundaries like body and mind, public and private, subject and object, these boundaries are imagined primarily and constructed primarily in an oppositional manner. By this oppositional manner, I mean that they have mostly been constructed or imagined and in a negative connotation with them. But what we are arguing in our paper is that there are certain other alternatives available of viewing these boundaries, and we are interested in looking and in fact exploring the ways and alternatives कि कैसे ये boundaries जो हैं इनको हम लोग not only in oppositional terms but इसके अलावा भी we can look into the manner कि ये boundaries किस तरह associated हैं. So for example, when I was going through the academic side of this, that what are the various available alternatives of imagining those boundaries, one of the most important aspects that I identified is that the work by Chantal Mouffe, although she is a political philosopher and her work is primarily related to the concept of the political, but the philosophical foundations of her work in imagining and giving an alternative view of how we can imagine boundaries is very important for our own paper. Because according to Mouffe, when she defines the political, she is basically arguing the fact that the division of we and they will always remain there. The boundary will remain there. It is the way that how we can imagine the boundary. And for that she introduces the concept of agonism. So she talks about that the difference between this pair of we and they will remain always there. But the fact is that they can be imagined in an alternative way. And the alternative way, according to Mouffe, is that the difference and the opposition can be viewed in terms of agonism, not antagonism. So this is one of the ways that how boundaries have been constructed, and this is the alternative way. So this is the first part that we talked about. The second thing that is when we define Sufism, because this paper is also talking about Islamic mysticism and Sufism, we need to be very careful because we are not suggesting that whatever definition we are implying in our paper is the only definition of Sufism, because defining Sufism is one of the most, I think, it's the most difficult way because there are various other definitions. But what we have chosen in our paper of definition of Sufism is that it is Sufism, Islamic mysticism of Sufism is basically what we have identified, the theme of love, and the strand of Sufism that talks about the concept of love within Sufism. And there are certain different elements within this aspect of Sufism, with this strand of Sufism, that primarily hinge these boundaries. The hinge of the boundaries within Sufism, we are talking about the concept of love. So now I would like to briefly explain the boundaries within Sufism and how Sufism and Islam, mystical Islam, can view these boundaries. For example, what we have identified is the fact that there are 2 and 3 binaries. For example, number 1, the binary of lover and beloved. This is the binary within Sufism and Islamism that has been imagined in a purely different manner. For example, when we talk about the binary of lover and beloved, it is basically a binary that talks about the creation and creator. And it is hinged not in oppositional terms, but almost entirely it is hinged upon the concept of love. The second important binary within Islamic mysticism is the binary of inside and outside. It is also very important to view that how this binary has been imagined and viewed within Islam. So for example, this binary about inside and outside within Sufism talks about that these are not oppositional. Inside and outside is not oppositional. They are primarily connected with each other. And the way, for example, I would like to quote one Sufi when he says that the inside and outside are connected in a manner that if you start by purifying your inner self, you will be concerned with the outer. For example, if you start with your inner self, purifying your inner self, that means you are also, then that will be manifested in the outer self.
So maybe we could talk a little bit about that purification that one sort of needs to have. So in order to sort of look at more the internal self, purification को अगर उसके ऊपर थोड़ी सी बात कर सकते.
Purification by this definition is that the inside and outside are not in opposition. They are just paired. And the pairing is in this manner that whatever is happening inside, it should also be manifested outside, and whatever is happening outside has also a connectedness within inside. So by purifying it is imagined like this.
So I think the way I understand what Saad is saying, and I think I also subscribe to this, is also that as you turn to yourself, and like we always identify, जब हम problems की बात करते हैं, conflict की बात करते हैं, उसका जो battleground होता है वो हमेशा external एक realm होता है, दुनिया का realm जिसे हम कहते हैं. So the world, we kind of in the external realm begin to define issues, problems, oppositions, and so on. So in Sufism, basically, you turn inwards and you try to purify करने का मतलब you actually you have an internal dialogue. You actually are then in a dialogue with yourself, not with the outside as much. That's not to say that you don't act when appropriate in the external realm. That's not what I'm saying. But you actually do turn inwards. A lot of us actually don't do that. For instance, everything that we have around is a distraction from the self. So you have the mobiles that we carry, and I hardly, in myself included, but I hardly see people who just sitting without doing anything, just sitting still. We have to have something in our hands to distract us from the self. So in Sufism, you actually attract the self. You actually engage with the self. And so when you purify yourself, the perception, how you view the external realm changes. So how miracle, for instance, is described in A Course in Miracles, which is a very famous book for spiritual circles and masters. Miracle is defined when your perception, there is an error in our perception, how we see things, how things are happening, how we define our reality and so on. So a miracle is when most of us have an error in our perception, how we sort of look at the world. So when that error is corrected, that's a miracle. वहाँ पे मुआवजा होता है जब आपके देखने का अंदाज बदल जाता है या सूफिया के मुताबिक वो करेक्ट हो जाता है, सही हो जाता है. जैसे नज़र हमारी खराब होती है तो ऐनक लगाते हैं हम. उसी तरीके से ये भी है कि आपका एक perception of how you understand and see the world, which has also been my experience, वो change हो जाता है. So that's how when you purify the self, the internal, the connection between the internal and external is अंदर से आप साफ हो गए और आप अपने आप को समझ गए तो बाहर का आपका जो देखने का अंदाज है वो बदल जाता है. Questions बाद में. Can we wait till the questions, please?
So the other point that what do we mean binaries within Sufism and how Sufism, these binaries within Sufism, what do we mean by that? Throughout our discussion, for example, in this paper, what we are arguing and making this point is that binaries are by default and by definition they are not bad at all. And what Sufism do in Islamic mysticism and Sufism, it gives us a different perspective of an imagination of these binaries. Similarly, there are the difference within these binary can be imagined within Sufism in a very different manner, and that's what precisely we are arguing. That there is no singular reality. There are duality and plurality, and we should not be indulged ourselves in a manner that we are interested in only one definition of anything. So there can be multiple ways, there can be multiple imaginations of viewing these binaries. So for instance, when what happens with the binaries is that कि अगर हम एक बाइनरी एक पेयरिंग में अगर एक एलिमेंट को किसी और के ऊपर if we insist on the one element on the other, it will lose the essence of that binary. वो जो उसके पूरा का पूरा the way it has been constructed, वो उसका essence खत्म हो जाता है. So what we are arguing is that mysticism gives us a different idea, different ideology of how we can look towards these binaries.
So, you want to go to the case study? Okay, so we have, this is sort of our paper is a draft and we'll probably get it published, but we're kind of skipping a lot of things and just we'll get to the case study. Why I want to use Sheikha Shabano's case study is because she also comes from a similar background as me, and she was also a Marxist and feminist, like I am and I have been. So what I did actually was to have just an interview with her and ask her about some of the things that we wanted to raise in our presentation. And so I'm just going to actually, like I said, just be an instrument and be a vehicle to just convey how she sees. Like, question is, how does a feminist and a Marxist then turn towards Sufism? I mean, that would be the question anyone would have, right? What happens? What happens? Is there an error in their judgment? Have they just given up? Are they defeatist? Or what's really actually happening here? So with that sort of intent, I'll try and sort of just kind of read out excerpts from the interview. So the first thing that I asked her was like, why the Sufi path? You know? And she said that in university, and now I'm sort of quoting directly, I became convinced that feminism and Marxism had understood and articulated the problems of our world. So when I started working, I was eager to implement the implications of feminist and Marxist thought at work and in my personal life. I expected that more and more people would see the truth and join the struggle. जो हम सब कोशिश भी करते रहते हैं कि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा लोग जो है वो हमें join करें. And I would be strengthened and fulfilled by my work because I was doing what was urgent and meaningful. That was her understanding, perhaps about 2 decades and a half ago. I expected, so I read that part, but almost from the beginning I encountered conflict. Everywhere, and not just from outside the struggle, but from the inside. The conflict with other women, leftists and activists was the most intense and painful that I experienced. So her conflict was not just with the people who you're supposed to be against and fighting against, but also from within the feminist circle. So basically Shabano worked in New York City for a good, I think, 20 years or so, and she was organizing domestic workers in New York City under, there was this association, Awaz. So they actually did legal sort of advice and all of that. So this was her sort of experience at that time. So later on, she says that my activism had been the biggest single source of conflict in my life. So when we had a baby, and I was home all the time, by choice, I thought my personal life would become more harmonious, but I continued to experience conflict with my husband on the smallest issues. The deep sense of alienation and isolation I had experienced in New York City continued to haunt me, even though we had moved temporarily to Pakistan and were living with my husband's parents. I began to get this sense that I had no control over anything. No matter how hard I tried and what I did, I couldn't get anything right and I had no peace. We hardly talk about peace in terms of us or women. So in 2009, she met her Sufi teacher, Sheikh Ibrahim, and came to the Shadiliya Sufi order, to which I also came later. So I'm just going to read out a poem that sort of, in a very contemplative way, describes her journey for coming or towards, as she came towards Sufism. The title is Call Out My Name. I knew who I was, where I was, when I was with you. And then you took away all but a flicker of this knowing, blindfolded and left me out, all alone in a long dark night. Lost and unconscious, trapped in myself, the knowing that was I, buried deep, deep somewhere, covered in layer upon layer of darkness. This flicker blazed sometimes. When I saw the face of one I loved, with a love that choked, thought made me forget everything. This flicker flared up sometimes, when I stood enchanted by the quietest of lakes, in the heart of a red earth mountain, filled with awe, that felt like unspeakable terror, made me tremble, made me shake. This flicker became a torch, a light, when a verse of poetry, a verse of prayer, squeezed and wrenched and tore my heart, made me yearn for something I could not name. The night is still dark, the flicker a flame, dancing ahead, playing hide and seek. With each step that I walk towards this light, the path behind closes forever. Even if I want it, there is no way back. And ahead, the night is my path, stretched out forever. Speak to me. Give me a sign. Call out my name. Please call out my name. So then, of course, I asked her what was her experience as a woman on the Sufi path, because generally the idea is that women generally do not sort of go up in the hierarchy in different sort of spiritual Sufi orders. So her experience was that she says, my primary spiritual connection and relationship are with my sheikh, who's a man. And not only just a man, but he's a white man who is now converted. And he has never made me feel that my gender is an issue for him. On the contrary, he's often said to me, you validate this path, you validate my teachings. I could not have hoped for a stronger endorsement from a spiritual teacher, man or woman. But she says that I know that there are traditional tariqas or orders where women remain disciples are not recognized as teachers. So she then also describes a little bit about, what is this spirituality all about? So the spiritual quest, this is very important to understand because this basically is really the hinge or the foundation of what I'm talking about. The spiritual quest is not about the world. Wealth, status, recognition, equality, control, laws, society. The world is the gymnasium where we get to exercise our spiritual muscles. It is not the battleground, and therefore not the territory to be conquered. The battleground, territory, and victory are internal. This also describes what really Sufism is all about, putting it very simplistically. And then she goes on to say that Sufism teaches us that separation is an illusion, so separation from other, or from the world or whatever, is an illusion, and the spiritual quest is about recovering a deep interconnectedness with the rest of creation. In addition to practices, our core spiritual practice is unconditional service. So when we're saying that you go more inwards, it doesn't mean you sort of overlook or sort of, don't do anything in the outer, external, the worldly realm. You actually do better service, and it's what she terms unconditional service, or how to act in the best interest of the other without really regard to self-interest anymore. Spiritual traditions such as Sufism say that the outer world is a mere reflection of a richer, more mysterious, inner and unseen world. And it is this inner treasure